What happened to Nintendo? This is the company that gave us Mario, the Wii, and some of the greatest games ever made. But now, they're patenting basic game mechanics, they're charging $10 for a demo, $80 for a game that doesn't even come on the cartridge, and if you mod the console you bought, they'll brick it remotely.
This isn't the Nintendo that I left.
Nintendo used to feel like they were the company that cared. Now it feels like they're just becoming another greedy AAA company. So where did it all go wrong? Well, our downfall story starts with two people who completely reshaped Nintendo for the better. This is Reggie Fils-Aimé.
My name is Reggie. I'm about kicking ass, I'm about taking names, and we're about making games.
It's 2004, and Nintendo's new ass-kicking Reggie, the VP of marketing, was about to meet the one person who would change everything. That was Satoru Iwata, the president of Nintendo at the time. And as Reggie was joining Nintendo, he asked to meet Iwata himself, directly. This was a big no-no. You didn't go straight to the top as a new hire. But Iwata surprisingly agreed. The meeting was only supposed to last 30 minutes, but instead it lasted for hours. These two just hit it off. There was this passion these two shared, and they would become the dynamic duo at the top of Nintendo. Iwata, of course, was at the top because he was the legendary CEO. But why Reggie? He was this American coming into a Japanese company. And not only that, he was giving Western pushback. Well, Reggie wasn't just any kind of business executive. He had the experience, a bunch of marketing awards, but there was something even more important. Beneath it all, he was a Nintendo fan, through and through. He'd been playing Nintendo games for decades, once even staying up till 3 a.m. with his son to play A Link in the Past, even with work in the morning. I can relate to that. But that's the key here. Reggie jumped to the top of Nintendo because he really understood what made Nintendo great. He may have been an executive, but he was a fan and customer first. Which brings us to his first big challenge.
Whether you're talking about Donkey Kong or Tetris, Madden or Mario, Metal Gear or Resident Evil, he with the best games wins. Always been that way, always will.
The Game Boy was a huge success. So was the Color, and so was the Advance. But now it was time to change things up. So Nintendo was hard at work getting ready to move into new territory, where no one else could follow. And this vehicle, this new path, well, it was the Nintendo DS. But first, a bit of context. With the DS underway, Reggie and Iwata decided to follow the Blue Ocean strategy. This is about as classic as NBA strategies go. And it's pretty straightforward. Red Ocean, bloodbath. That's lots of competition. Blue Ocean, it's empty. It's uncharted waters. There's no direct competition. This is great, but it comes with an obstacle. Sometimes products can be so new that people don't quite get the value. But unlike many odd products that don't make sense that we see in the market, the DS had this incredible value. However, it wasn't immediately obvious. Why two screens, people ask? The picture is not so great, it's small. Why touchscreen? And keep in mind, this is about 3 years before the iPhone. People weren't that familiar with this kind of touchscreen. For Nintendo, people needed to be able to experience this for themselves to get it. Moreover, those that tried the DS at E3, they weren't that impressed. Yet there was this other problem, the PSP. Journalists were raving about it, while the DS left people a bit confused. Reggie noticed that after Nintendo tried the PSP, the Sony representative would come and clean it up, so it always looked perfect. But in reality, it would be covered in scratches. The PSP had its flaws. If people could really see the DS's potential compared to the PSP, thought Reggie, it could be a huge hit, but it needed the right game. And that game was Metroid Prime Hunters. It was a beloved series, and in this game you could aim with the touchscreen in a first-person shooter. People could experience that potential of the DS firsthand. But the game wasn't ready. This was really bad. The DS risked flopping. So Reggie did something pretty unconventional. He didn't push for crunch or unrealistic targets like so many companies do. Instead, he found a compromise. The team should pivot to make a demo, Prime Hunters First Hunt, which would come with the first 2 million DS units. This was the perfect solution, but it was pretty controversial. Why? Well, Nintendo hated and hates giving away content for free. I mean, they really hate it. Plus, it would push back the main game's release even further. Iwata, surprisingly, trusted Reggie, and he gave the thumbs up. So what happened?
I was number 9, but I've been here since 10 o'clock.
Grab bag as soon as you walk up the door. So.
There, man. Have fun. Thanks.
People immediately got what the DS could do, and then it just snowballed. To date, the Nintendo DS is the second best selling video game console of all time, 154 million units. And if you're a millennial like me, the DS was amazing. Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, you had Mario Kart, you had Nintendogs. I mean, the amount of time I spent playing Nintendogs on the bus from school is unreal. It was a huge success, and following this, Iwata promoted Reggie to president of Nintendo of America. So it was all going great, but Nintendo had a big challenge right around the corner. You see, everyone at Nintendo had been there for decades. I mean, decades. But these two, despite being at the top of Nintendo, they were very new. Iwata had come from HAL Laboratory, a studio that made games for Nintendo, and Reggie, well, he came from the US marketing world, having worked at Pizza Hut and VH1 before Nintendo had brought him in. They were essentially outsiders, and they were at a company that was so traditional. At that point, only 3 people had held the CEO title since the company's inception in the 1800s. But the beauty of this was that it gave Iwata and Reggie a totally different perspective to everyone else, most of whom were pretty deeply entrenched in tradition.
The graveyard of any industry is filled with the headstones of companies who decided to keep doing things the same old way.
And the people there at Nintendo would need that new perspective to solve this next problem: consoles. At the time, Nintendo's handhelds were booming, but their home consoles were another story. Since the NES, each Nintendo console had sold less than the last, from 61 million to 49 million to 32 million to the GameCube at 21 million. And to be clear, I love the GameCube. Smash Melee, gold. But their competition was absolutely killing them. The PS2 had sold 160 million units, almost 8 times more. This was really bad. Not to mention Xbox had just entered the game. Nintendo needed to shake things up. They needed to come up with something different. Enter the Nintendo Wii.
Mr. Iwata, maybe this year I can just take the names and you can kick the,
Your hand through the strap.
Yes, of course. That is my job.
This console was revolutionary. A console with full motion controls. No one had done anything like this, at least not at this scale. It had that classic NES control scheme, but you could really swing the remote. It was pretty revolutionary, and it just felt fun. It felt intuitive. And we need to look no further than Wii Sports. What seemed like a tech demo was actually the most important selling point for the Wii. It was sports, which everyone in the world understood, and you just try it and instantly go, wow, this is fun. You immediately get what the Wii is supposed to be. But the developers had also poured everything into the depth of the game. Fun after an hour, and after 10 hours, and after 100 hours. But Reggie saw the writing on the wall. He knew the Wii would have the same problem as the DS. Even more so, it was too unique to understand from just watching videos. But there was a solution here, and it would be Reggie's biggest battle to date. He proposed that Wii Sports should be bundled and free with the Wii. The first Hunt demo on the DS, now that was controversial, but this was something else. He suggested the idea to Iwata, and immediately the two friends clashed. Reggie, Nintendo does not need to give away precious content for free. It is a unique software that motivates consumers to buy our hardware. No, we should not pack in Wii Sports. This wasn't one hard discussion, but months of back and forth. And after many months of hard talks, Iwata came around to Reggie's thinking. Yet Reggie had another obstacle, the third heavy hitter at the top of Nintendo, Shigeru Miyamoto. If you don't know him, you definitely know his work. Mario, Donkey Kong, The Legend of Zelda, Star Fox. Miyamoto is the godfather of video games, and the head of game development at Nintendo. This was Reggie's fiercest opponent, and after he and Iwata pitched the idea, Miyamoto was not happy. Neither of you understands the challenges of creating software people love to play, he said. We do not give away our software. It seemed like all hope was lost, but eventually Reggie, Iwata, and Miyamoto came to a compromise. Bundle Wii Sports for the Western markets, but for Japan and Asia, it would be sold separately. So what happened? The Wii did well globally, but in the West, it blew up. Wii Sports was huge. It's hard to describe how big it actually was if you weren't around at the time, but people were buying the console like hotcakes. They were buying it for that social experience with Wii Sports. Think about hospitals, retirement homes, cruise ships. Everyone wanted this game, not just kids. Reggie proved that he was absolutely right. It wasn't about giving stuff away. It was about helping customers buy into that vision of the Wii. It was about delighting players and helping them understand the fun. I think without the Wii Sports Bundle, the Wii wouldn't have succeeded nearly as much. By the holiday season, the Wii was the fastest selling console in video game history. Nintendo was in the golden age again. But sadly, good times don't last forever. Although Reggie and Iwata had become celebrities in the Nintendo community, showing up time and time again in trailers and presentations, things were about to get bad, starting with the 3DS. For handhelds, the 3DS was pretty good. I mean, it was a Nintendo handheld that had dual screens, but with this cool 3D function, and had some great games like Ocarina of Time 3D, but it just wasn't as exciting as the DS. 3D was great, sure, but not in the way touchscreens or motion controls were when they came out. The 3DS just wasn't that innovative or unique, so it kind of struggled. Reggie tried to push for a price drop to $199, but Iwata and other leaders just would not budge. And unfortunately, the 3DS underperformed, selling about half the units of the DS. Retailers were quickly losing interest, and Nintendo had to then actually make aggressive price cuts, which then lost them money. But the bigger challenge, like before, was their home console, the Wii U. First, this thing was confusing, just inherently. Like, the whole thing didn't make sense to people. Even though it was a new console, many customers thought that it was maybe an extension, an upgrade, the Wii 2. There was the gimmick of the handheld controller, but the value wasn't completely obvious to people and why it was fun. I mean, the company tried to fix this by bundling Nintendo Land with the Black Premium version of the Wii U, but even then, people, they didn't really get it. Who was this for? What problem was this console solving? But there was more issues than just the consoles. The games fell short too. Star Fox Zero, which I think could have been pretty fun, but it forced players to use, that little screen, and they made it pretty unplayable. And then there's Metroid fans who were dying for a new game after 8 years, which, by the way, is why Hollow Knight succeeded. And when Nintendo did finally announce a new Metroid game, it was this like chibi multiplayer game for the 3DS. There was something going on. There was some kind of disconnect at this time between Nintendo and players. It felt like Nintendo just wanted to be different, but didn't really understand what was fun about some of their new things, their new hardware they were producing. So the Wii U, it missed the mark. Sales tanked, and it sold barely a tenth of the Wii's sales. This was really bad. But through this blunder, Satoru Iwata showed his true nature, because after 3DS underperformed, he cut his own salary by 50%. He wasn't on some Bobby Kotick salary either, instead about $2 million US. And then what was crazy is the board and senior leaders at Nintendo also took pay cuts, something around 20 to 30%. Then with the Wii U still underperforming, Iwata halved his salary again in 2014. He said it was to show our sincere attitude and to fulfill our responsibility. In the failure, some staff were laid off, sadly, but this move did prevent many more from losing their jobs. It showed that Nintendo really did care, even if they got it wrong. They cared about delivering value for customers, and they cared about their own people. Other CEOs, they just lay off 10, 20, 30% of their staff, say sorry, and then spend millions of dollars on classic cars. But not Iwata, not Nintendo. Yet some of these mistakes, the Wii U, the 3DS, would be the seeds to Nintendo's biggest breakthrough. The gamepad, with all of its problems, had glimpses of genius. You can use the big TV, but if somebody else still needs it, they can swap it to a gamepad. Want to move around, take the gamepad with you. All great ideas, and people loved this. But it wasn't really executed that well. You couldn't go far, and anything could block the connection. But something magical was there. They were onto something. So Nintendo got back to work. Then came the Switch. It was like the Wii U, but perfect. The value was obvious. Play on the TV or play on the go. Plus, Nintendo pushed back their big, brand new Zelda to launch with it, Breath of the Wild. And if you're like me, you probably know the rest. The Switch has sold over 150 million units, and Nintendo has reclaimed their spot at the top. But it wasn't all good news. Sadly, during these years of development and change, Satoru Iwata's health had been deteriorating, and in July 2015, he passed away. He never really got to see the Switch in all of its success, but I'm sure he would have been proud of his company and of his friend Reggie.
Attending Mr. Iwata's funeral was a very difficult emotional experience. I made sure to have learned the proper Japanese customs. There's a way you pinch incense and you hold it to your head, and the way you spend time in front of the remains. I made sure I did that perfectly well because I wanted to demonstrate the respect that I had for my friend and my mentor.
Then another blow happened to Nintendo in 2019. Reggie announced his retirement. These two legends of Nintendo were gone too soon. And that brings us to today. After Iwata's passing and Reggie stepping away, Nintendo was on the right path for a while. They were doing well, making good games, mostly good decisions, but slowly things were just slipping away. The first signs were in 2022. An employee asked Reggie's replacement, Doug Bowser, about unionizing in an internal AMA. He was quickly fired. He filed a complaint to the NLRB. Nintendo settled everything out of court with this employee. Not to mention Doug Bowser apologized. But to me, it's clear that something was going on, that the culture of Nintendo had changed. Within the company, there were talks of union busting, and Nintendo contractors were saying that they were being treated like second-class citizens. Reggie had a few thoughts on Nintendo's behavior.
A core focus while I was at Nintendo of America was having a healthy culture within the company. And I know I was able to achieve that. And certainly what's being described does not seem like a healthy culture.
But these unhealthy culture choices were just the beginning. In 2025 came the Switch 2. And while functionally it's very similar to the Switch, the release couldn't have been more different. For one thing, it had a short paid demo that cost $10. If you can't tell, Nintendo still hates releasing anything for free, even this. And after this, Reggie subtly tweeted how he bundled Wii in with the Wii Sports. He clearly did not agree with the $10 demo. But it gets worse. New Mario Kart? $80. Except now, that physical cartridge doesn't even have the game. It's just a key to download it. It's just the Fallout 76 all over again. Nintendo said this is to future-proof the Switch 2, as games supposedly grow bigger, but I don't believe that. And there's more. In their terms of service, Nintendo states that if you use any unauthorized software or tamper with security of your own console, it will remotely disable your Switch 2. That's right. Mod the console you bought and paid for, they'll brick it. I mean, we've gone beyond licensing game situation, where now we're licensing consoles. And of course, Nintendo has lobbied against the Stop Killing Games movement in Europe. They are patenting basic video game loops, and this is all on top of the Switch 2 locking out third-party docks, making you pay for theirs and only theirs. This ain't selling me on the console. If anything, it's selling me on the Steam Deck. Fans were naturally pissed at all these choices. Every one of these decisions most likely would have caused a huge stir on their own, but combined, they're just compounding and increasing that concern of players. Something is seriously off. So the question is, what's going wrong? The answer to me is that the current leadership, they don't scream customer first. Probably because they aren't. I don't think the people at Nintendo are evil. Not at all. I mean, that's ridiculous. But I don't think the leaders have the heart of the gamers like Reggie and Iwata did. Iwata and Reggie were beloved because they cared about the customers. They wanted to deliver value. They were gamers themselves. Iwata even responded to a fan letter from a middle schooler, and he said something crucial in his letter. Making video games is a job that requires a lot of energy. But for me, it was even more fun than playing them. That and the fact that other people could also enjoy what I'd made gave me a sense of purpose. Nintendo has always been big and corporate, but there's been that fun culture baked into everything, baked into their games, their consoles, their E3s, their leaders.
My body is ready.
But now, it feels like that culture is just pay for it and be happy. That fun culture of Nintendo in the past seems to be gone, or at least going away. Now, I'm not saying that Nintendo is failing or that the Switch 2 is going to fail. It sold 3.5 million units in 4 days. Granted, pretty much every Nintendo console does this. Even the Wii U sold out the entire stock on its launch month, but something is clearly different at the company. And I think it's going to hurt them long term. If you go back to videos with Reggie or Iwata and look at the comments, it's all positive. Everyone's nostalgic about these business executives. And after Iwata's passing and Reggie's retirement, fans miss them. I miss them. I don't think it's just nostalgia. Fans miss the Nintendo that cared about them, that cared about fun. But it feels like it's gone. And to be clear, I want Nintendo to succeed. They are an incredible company with so much history. I love their games and have since I was a kid. I mean, this is my Nintendo from 30 years ago with my old Pokemon Snap still in there. I want my kids to have the same experience, to love Nintendo like I did. Nintendo has been successful because they've done video games different than the rest for most of my life. There's a reason they have been around for 135 years. But now they're acting like every other large video game company, and I worry about their future. As Reggie put it 20 years ago,
The graveyard of any industry is filled with the headstones of companies who decided to keep doing things the same old way, playing only on the margin, making things just a little bit better. That strategy works for a while, but ultimately it's fatal. Over the years, our industry has come to accept progress simply by what's on the screen.